All right, this is CIS240 database systems. We have just completed watching a video on normalization in databases up to and including the third normal form. Now that's what you're seeing on the screen at the moment. And I'm going to take the third normal form and actually enter it into a database package. And I'm going to use Access simply because that's what's on my machine right now. So let me switch over to the Access view. Let's see, Access right here and share it. Okay. Now, I have already gone ahead and created just the blank database. That's the first thing you have to do when you start Access. You have to name your database. You don't get to do that later. You do that right up front. So I've already done that, and you can see it's being saved on my computer under my account number, which, by the way, that is the big secret. I think that's public data at the school. Anyway, and for whatever reason, this is where it's going. But I have called the database CIS240 normal form. And so we're going to take the normalization that was done and create the tables and the relationships with it. Okay, I'll start off with the customer uh, table. And there's a couple of things I want to show you on this that wasn't thought out. Uh, okay, you should be seeing the normalization now. Look in the customer database. Look that we have a customer ID that's referred to in the other database. Notice we have an order ID field, we have an item ID field, but the author of this video did not create a customer ID field. So I will do that, and I will use the numbers that are shown here, which will be customer numbers 2, 3, and 4. There is no customer number 1 because of the way he has done this. So anyway, that's what we'll start with is the customer table. So I'll go back over to Access. All right, in Access, we have multiple ribbons, just like you do in any of the Windows applications. This one is Create, and I wish to create a table. Now, there's multiple ways to do this, so I'm just going to pick one and do it, okay? In this case, here is a table ready to go, but you got to add everything in the world to it. All right, so starting with ID, let's see if it'll let me change that. Yeah. Number filters, no. So I'll have to come back and change that after I have created this. So that's going to wind up being my customer ID. Now in the customer table, we have a first name, a last name, and the state of residence. So for first name and last name, that'll just be a short text. Field 1 will be renamed first. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing over here with the next field. It'll also be short text, and I'll call that one last. And the last thing that we have is a state, which will also be a short field. So I'll put that in as state. Now, this is a table view of the table, which is very comfortable for putting things into the table, which we'll do. But I need to go back and change. This is going to be automatic numbering, and it's going to start with 1. And on 1, no, we don't have a customer 1. So to make changes to the fields themselves, not the data in the fields, but to the fields themselves, I'm going to come up and change the view to a design view. And it says, okay, name your table. No problem. This one is customer table. Okay, and now our view changes, and this is information about each field. And I want to change this auto number to be nothing more than just a number, and that way I can put whatever numbers I need to in it. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see the little gold box, and that indicates for this table that is the key field. All right, so I made that correction. I also want to rename this to match what's on the normal form that the author left us, and this is called customer ID. So there is customer ID. All right, so I've got all that done. And now here's one nice thing that's, well, it's nice and it didn't. I'm going to change the view back to the table so I can put information in, and it will not let me do that without saving what I've done. It is a mixture of very hard and very easy to lose data with Access. You really have to watch what you're doing on this. Okay, so my first customer ID is 2. I'm just going to hit enter and it'll walk me across. The first name is Joe, last name is Smith, and the state is New York. And yes, we could do a drop down where you just select which state beyond what I want to show you tonight. Okay, the second customer is going to be customer 3. And whoops, got to be careful. I don't know if you'll notice, but I put a space in there by accident. Okay, enter. And his name is Sam Jones, also from New York. Then the next one is customer number 4, named Jill, if I can get on the right keys, Davis, and she's from California. Okay, now here's something just to warn you about. If I hit enter and put anything in this line by accident, then this becomes a line in the database and you have to go to a little bit of extra trouble to get that out. So that's really all I want to do with that particular table. That one is now complete. Next one I'm going to put in is the items table. So I'll go back to create. I'll create another table and it will become items table. And same thing, the ID, this one can be automatic the way that we're doing this. So I may just leave that alone. But the first thing we have is the item name. And it just didn't like what I did for some reason. Okay, item name. And on the next one, oh, I know why, because I didn't tell it what kind of field it was. The item name and then the item price, I'm going to put it in as currency. Okay, then I'm going to double check over here. I'll have to watch what that came in as because I forgot to tell it. But I also need to change the name of this one, and that's going to let me do that. That will be item price. Okay, hit enter, and no, I don't want any other fields. Thank you very much. So again, I'll change back over to the design view. It will force me to name this one, and this is the item table. And tell it okay. It changes our view. I want this ID field itself to be item ID. So I'll change its name here. Short text, it defaulted to the one that I needed, so I came up okay there. And I'll leave auto number alone. You'll see the difference in between this auto number and in the customer table where I just had it as number. Okay, I believe that's all the changes that need to be in here. Be done. I'll change my view back. It gives me that warning. Yes, I wish to save it. Okay, now then to fill this in, for the item ID, it's auto numbering, so I just hit enter, and that should fill in for me here. First one, item name is slips, and the item price on this is $36. Okay, it goes down to the new. Notice that it did fill in the item ID for me. So I just hit enter here. The next one is clips, and that one is $18. New, bump over, we have picks, and that one is $12.50. And the next one up is widgets, and that one is $15. And the last one is grommets, and that one is $27. Now, if I quit right where I am, over here there's a little pencil mark, and in Access what that means is this record has not yet been saved. To save it, all you have to do is just click off anywhere and it will save it. Do not try to save it. You can hit enter, it'll save, but don't put anything on this next blank line. We don't want it. Okay, so we've got the customer table and the item table. And now then last but not least is the order table. So I'll go back to create, go to table. And let's see, this is also one just straight numbering, so I'll leave it alone. This first one is going to be plain number, and that's going to be customer ID. Okay, that's how I tie this order into the customer. And then on the, that needs to be short text. I don't know if I put that in or not, but that's okay. All right, on this one, it's going to be order date. So this one will be date and time. And I will call this one order date. Okay, then after that, I've got an order quantity, which will just be a number. And that's going to be order quantity. Okay, and then I'll have one more, and that's going to be the item ID, which is also just a number. All right, and I need to change the name on this. So I also need to change the name of the table. The easiest way to do that is just I'm going to change views to check on everything. And this one is the order table. Okay. Now then I change the top one to be order ID. You can leave it auto number, doesn't hurt. Everything else is as it's supposed to be, so we're good there. It'll force me to save this when I come back over. Okay, and I'm now ready to fill this in. So this first one is order number 1, customer ID 2, date is 1/17, and this video shot in 2018, so that's why this. The order quantity is 15, and the order item ID is number 4. Okay, now then we go down to the next one. It's going to be order ID 2. This is customer ID 3, 1/24, 2018. And this says 12, and it's item number 5. Okay, then order number 3 is for also customer number 3, 3/15, 2018. And that was 10 of them, and it's item number 1. Then 4. Oh, sorry, it's beeping because I'm trying to fill in order, or I accidentally tried to fill in order ID, and that does it itself. It will not let me. Okay, so this will be number 4. It is customer ID 2. It is 3/18/2018. The order quantity, on number 4, order quantity is 20, and the item ID is 3. Okay, and then the last one coming in. Okay, the customer ID is 4. The date is 5/10, same year. The quantity is 16, and the item ID is 2. And that's all the data to fill in on this. And again, just to show you, to get rid of the little mark and to force this record to be saved, I can hit enter as well as check in anywhere else. Just be careful not to put anything on this row at all. Okay, so I now have the customer table, the item table, and the order table all filled out. Okay, so that was what was on the screen. And one more time, I'll do a quick look at the screen so we can refresh the relations and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm looking at order table right now, and this is in third normal form. Okay, so I need to put how all this stuff is related together. So I'll go back over to Access, and we'll look at another screen on Access for this. Okay, now then, there are several things up here, like the home has this stuff in it, and you can do sorting and all kinds of things with it. Create is where we created our tables, okay? And external data if I wanted to import some stuff. Database tools, all right? This is where I can get into and set up the relationships. So I'll click on that. It'll give me another screen that's empty. And it has all of nothing in it. So what do I want over here? Well, let's see. I want the customer table, and I'm just clicking and dragging, the item table, and the order table. Now the question is, how are these things related? Well, for one thing, notice key fields are clearly marked, so it's very easy to keep up with those. What isn't clearly marked is foreign keys, but we're going to designate those right now. All right, so in an order table, I might have multiple orders for the same customer ID, but there will only be one customer with that ID. So this will be a one-to-many relationship based on these two fields. So to do that, I'm going to click and drag. And when I come over to the field to match up, it says, okay, I'm with you. Now then, here is information about the relationship, that line between them. First of all, is this from customer table, customer ID to order table, customer ID? Yes, it is. Okay, and this little checkbox says, do not let me place any customer ID in an order that doesn't exist in the customer table. So that keeps us from just making up a number and putting it out there. It's got to be for an actual customer. The relationship type is one to many. It's going to be one to many. So that's looking all right. Other things we can do, but we'll just click on create. And it gives us this message. It's saying, wait a minute, you want me to mess with the table, but the table's already in use. And I'm thinking, well, no, it's not. Well, yeah, it is. And you have to just know access to know. Okay, give me a second. Before I can do this, I have to go get rid of these. And let me tell you, the first time you do this, you will be so nervous. Is this going to delete the whole table? No, it just releases it from current use. They're still over there, so we're okay. So let's try this again. Customer ID to customer ID. We've already talked about it. I'll do the enforce and click on create. And we now have one to many. So that is a primary key to a foreign key. The item table is going to be exactly the same. One description for an item, but it might have been ordered many, many times. So it's going to be a one to many again. So I'll come in and click and drag. Okay, and you double check that you're doing the right ones. Okay, enforce referential integrity, and it is one to many, and then click on create. Okay, and that's how we have indicated our key fields in the relationships between the tables. All right, now that we have set that up, let's go try to make a customer order report. Okay, so where is that going to come from? Well, let's see. How about if we create, and there's several options on this. Once you get comfortable with it and you already know what you want the report to look like, you can just go do the design yourself. It goes very quickly once you get used to it. For those of us that don't know what we're doing, well, let's go with the report wizard and see what it will do for us. Okay, so here's our report wizard. And it's asking, what information do you want on the report? Well, first up, really, it's going to be the order table that's driving this, okay, in this report. So the first thing I want to do is go to the order table. And from the order table, I could have, well, I don't want the customer ID, I want the customer's name. Or order ID would be okay, because that's really, we use that. Let's see, then order date would be good. Order quantity would be good. But again, I don't want the item ID, I want its actual name and price. Okay, so after I've got that started, let's go over to the customer table and pull in the just the first and last name is all I need. Okay, let's see, will it? Yeah, it's going, well, no, it won't. I was wanting to move that down. The order you put it in is the order it's going to show up. I'll live with it. Okay, and then the last thing is not the item ID, but I do need the item's name and price. So I'll pull over the item name and the item price. Okay, that's the fields I want. So I'll click on next. Again, the wizard is just helping us build this when we're not for sure what to do. Okay, so now then, how do you want to view your data? Do you want it by order or by customer or by item? Well, it depends upon who's asking for this. I'll just leave it by order. Okay, and then I'll go next. It says, do you want any grouping levels? Well, in these orders, there's only one item per order, and when you order it, that's pretty much it. So no, I don't think I need any grouping levels for this. Okay, and now then it says sort order. Well, I would like that in order table, order ID number, the way I'm doing this. And so I can do order ID, and it'll make sure it's in order by that. Underneath that, maybe customer. You'd have to go talk to the person who gets the report and see what they want. Click on next. Okay, do I want it to look like this? Do I want it to look like this? Do I want it to look like that? Okay, well, pick one and run it and see if you like it. And if not, try another one. So, and I'll leave it portrait. Okay. And this will adjust all the field widths to make sure everything fits from left to right, which means it will trim some fields if it needs to. Okay, then I'll go to next. And it says, okay, what's the heading? And I'll call this one just order table report. Preview it, or if I wanted to, I could go into the design. I'm not heading there because this isn't an access class, it is just database. So I'll click on finish and let's see what we wind up with. Okay, here's our order ID, the order date. We got 15 of them. Item price was 15. We don't have an extended anything, so that's a problem that needs to go be fixed. But notice it is pulling all of the required information together. And it's at this point that you've seen this, you might go back to the layout and say, you know, this looks a little wonky. Let's try to line some stuff up. Let's try to get a 15 times 15 on the report, which we could do. And it gives you page one, just to give you an idea of what it's going to look like when you print this thing out. So that's going from, if I can get my cursor over here. Okay, that's going from a picture of the third normal form into a report based off that third normal form. Okay, now there's a couple of observations to make on this. Depending upon what kind of computer we're running this on, is it an old computer that really takes a long time to do anything? Well, then let's take a look at this extended price, which would be 15 times $15, and get that over here. If we have an old computer and a lot of sales that we're going to be producing a report on, it might be worth it to us to go back through and put in for each line item that we sold what the total amount was. Normally, you do not input derived data. The sale amount can be derived by what we already have in the database, 15 times 15. But if that little calculation by itself over thousands of printed reports slows us down, then it would be much better as we are inputting these values to go ahead and calculate and place in there that redundant data that is derived data. Then there's one other item to look at. Very few people order only one thing at a time. So how do we go through this now and allow that one customer might have ordered 3, 4, 5 different items at the same time? Okay, well, let's go back and look at our tables then. Uh, I'll turn this report off and the relationships off. We can come back to those in a minute. Yes, I do want to save that. Thank you. Like I said, access is a mixed blessing on saving things. Okay, so let's take a look at the customer table. All right, there's not really anything to put there. This is just about the customer, not about anything the customer has ordered. We'd have other things like phone number and mailing address and uh, email address. All of that would have been added into this, but if we can do it with first name, last name, and state, we can do it with the rest of them. Okay, so well, what about the item table? And again, I'm trying to figure out how to keep up with multiple items purchased in one sale. Okay, well, no, because there's nothing there that will tie me back to a particular sale. Okay, well, let's look then at order table. Okay, well, perhaps here. Okay, so let's say that on order number 1, customer ID 2, on the 17th, ordered 15 4s and 10 3s and 7 1s. Okay, well, we can make fresh rows for this. So if I come in here and insert a new record, which it will let me do, okay, I want to do another order for order 1. And if I don't know if y'all can hear that or not, but I'm getting beeped every time I try to do that because I cannot just key in a number here. Why? Because it's automatically generated. Well, we can fix that. So we go over to design view and we change auto number to just be a number. Hey, okay, let's go back into view, save it. And now then I can come in and try right here to insert a new record. Okay, it's going to drop to the bottom. I can live with that. All right, so this will be order number 1 is still customer ID 2, and it's still on the 17th. And it is an amount, we ordered 12, number 2, item, whatever those are, and I hit enter, and this happens. And it's too small to read, but essentially what it says is I've used a duplicate key value in the key field. One of the rules for a key field is no duplicates allowed, which means I can't do it like this. Okay, so now this is kind of a quirk of access. Okay, I realize I've made a mistake. I'd like to go back, and I just don't even want that record. What I want to do is delete that record, and it's not going to let you do anything until you give it some valid value right here. So I'm just going to, let's see if I can get this. I'll just give it a 6. Okay, well, I don't have a customer 6, but it let me get by with that. But once I've done that, now I can come back and get rid of the record once it's complete. Okay, so back to where I was with my database. No, I can't do it that way. Well, then if we look at this, we are going to see that if I were to put order 1, customer ID 2, and everything is a duplicate about the order ID, the customer ID, and the order date. Duplicate data is the first thing you get rid of with first normal form. We can't do it that way and keep third normal form. So let's go back and look at the third normal form we were left with. Okay, that's this one. All right, and it is in third normal form. And if we left the story alone and left it right there, it would have been fine. except it really doesn't match the domain that it's supposed to be representing. In the domain, you don't do a different order form for each item sold. Well, not if you're selling stuff like slips, clips, picks, widgets, and grommets. If you're selling cars, yeah, you would do one car per order form or per sales slip. But no, that's not where we are. That's not what we're selling. And so this correct third normal form example does not match the domain in what that it's supposed to represent. So we've got to make a change to this. And if I start doubling up, one, two, and then do another one, two, okay, well, we got to figure out something on that. And so we actually are going to need a different table. We're going to need to split this table as well. So I'm going to go back over to Access, and we'll create it over there because I can't draw on this particular screen. So going back over to Access. All right. I'm going to remember these tables. I'm going to look at the relationship. Okay, that's what we've got going on. I think I'll look at it from here. Okay, so I can't have the same item ID twice in an order. We don't do that. We just say how many of them we got. So order ID will not depend on customer ID. The items that are purchased by the customer are listed on the order ID. So I need to move off the item ID. And maybe let's start creating this thing. All right, so I'm going to go back to create, and I'm going to create a table, and I'm going to call this one order row, like the rows that you have on a sales slip. So we'll create this one, and let's see, it needs to tie into an order ID, and that's a number. Okay, and I'll call that one order ID. All right, now if I've got order ID, now then I could list multiple item numbers. And I think because from the order itself, I can get the customer ID and the order date. The order quantity and the item ID need to go with the row. So I'm going to have the order ID, then I'm going to need another number that will be the item ID. And do I need anything else on that? Well, if we'll go back and look at the relationship, what about the quantity? The quantity relies on the item ID and the order ID. Those two combined tell me the quantity. So I can come back in this now and put order quantity. Okay. And can't remember. Let me just go back on over to the design. We'll fix everything over there. Okay, so this is going to be the order row table. Okay, and this field name, yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm going to leave that in there because behind the scenes, this will help me out. The actual key field is going to be this field. And let's see if I've got the right keystroke here. This field, and click on primary key. And now that becomes my primary key. I can do that or just leave order ID as the primary key because that's automatically generated. That would actually work nicely on this. Okay, so let's see. This is then order row ID. Okay, and this field is going to be the quantity. Okay, Now then, the fun part is, let's see, is there anything else I did? Did I name this order row table? Yeah, I did. Okay, so when I go back over to fill it in, save it. Okay, now then, let's look at order table, and we have order IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm going to come back over to order row table, and I'm going to alter the fact that in order ID 1, customer ID 2 only bought one item. We're going to buy a couple of items and see if we can make that work now. Okay, so I'll order row ID is going to be 1, and the order ID is going to be 1. And what was my customer number on the very first one was 2. Okay, so this will be, oh, I didn't need the customer number. Okay, the order ID and the item ID, and it was 4 that was purchased, and the quantity was 15. Okay, so this is supposed to be 15. Oh, looky there, I set that one up wrong. Okay, and that should be 15. Okay, and since it's bouncing to the left, that tells me it sees it as a text field. Text aligns to the left, numbers align to the right. So I'll go back over and change quantity to be a numeric field. Instead of short text, make that a number. And then it'll make me save this on the way back. Okay, it's just warning me this is much shorter. To continue, yeah, let's continue. Okay, and then let's go down to the next row, and this will also be order row ID will be the second ID. Okay, this is order 1, and let's pick up item ID 2, and let's get 6 of those. And then let's go to order ID 1 and pick up item ID 5, and let's get 10 of those. Okay, now then we will go to order ID 1, excuse me, order ID 2, and let's pick up item 1 and get 7. And let's do another order ID 2 and pick up item number, oh, what have we not used yet? 1, 2, 3, how about 3? And we'll get 5 of those. And then let's go down to order number, let's go on to 3. And 3 will just get 1 item. It picks up item 5 and gets 6 of them. And then we'll go to order number 4, and order number 4, item ID, I'm just making this up in case y'all haven't figured that out yet. Another 2, and 12 of those. And then order ID 4, and let's pick up item 3 and 7, and order ID 4. Like I said, this is the long part, just watching me key this stuff in. Let's pick up item 4, and we'll get 23 of those. And then order 4, and we'll pick up item 5, and I'll get 11 of them. And now then we'll go into order 5, and that's all the orders that we had. Let me go back and look and see what the order was actually supposed to be. Customer ID 4, that's fine. 16 of item 2. Okay, so 16 of item 2. So it's item 2, and I wanted 16 of them. And that should give me something for each order then. Okay, so now then, having done that, I should be able to come back to the order table. And what I want to get rid of is the item ID and the quantity. Okay, so order table, and I want to get rid of, what was it? I want to get rid of quantity. Okay, so let's see if I can wipe that out, and it will warn me If you do this, there is no going back. Okay, yeah, we got that. Now then, did I want to keep item ID? Because in my order row table, I have the item ID and I can tie this to the order with, yeah, I don't need the item ID over here. So I'll come over here and I'll also get rid of the item ID. Okay, now then, oops, that was supposed to go away. Order date, yeah, delete rows. If you want to delete this field, first delete its relationships in the relationship window. Ah, that's what it's telling me. Okay. All right. So I've got to go back over to relationships. And in case we forgot, you got to close all these out to be able to work with them. Yeah. Change the design table, order table. Yes. Okay. And then item table and customer table. And to get rid of item ID out of this table, I have to get rid of this relationship, which I can just click on and hit delete. Okay, so now then item table is not directly related to order table. And what I want to do is take order row table and pull it in. Okay, now then order ID will be tied to many rows, possibly. So I want to pull this over to my foreign key. Yes, and create. Okay, now then customer ID is tied into over here. Order date stands alone with this order. The item ID, oh, I couldn't get rid of that because I had relationships that were associated with it. Okay, so let me go get rid of that now. This is order table. And I want the design view and I want to get rid of this row. So it keeps up with things like, hey, you said that was a foreign key somewhere. And until you say it's not, one or more indexes. Okay, do you want it to delete this field anyway? Ooh, let's see what happens. Okay, now then go back to regular view, save it. Okay, and close it down. And okay, yeah, now we're doing right. Okay, now then item ID can be associated with many items found in rows. And so enforce that and say create. Okay, so we've rearranged the solution that we were given, which means it kind of had to be worked on a little bit to match more realistically the real world. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to come back in now and try to create a new report based on this that will allow me to have multiple rows per order. So create, nope, that's the item is create, and I want to do a report wizard. Okay, what do I want in there? Well, again, order table is running this. Okay, based on the orders here, this is, okay, so we're good here. All right, so I'll pick order table, and on it, I need the order ID, don't need the customer ID, but I need the order date. Okay, now then by customer, okay, I want the first and last name. Okay, now then by order row table, nope, because next up I want the item name. No, let me get the quantity here. Order row table. I'm going to pull the quantity in. I bought 7 of. Now the last one is the item, the order row table. There we go. And I need the order ID in the item ID. Nope. The item table. Okay, here we go. Now I need the item name and the item price. Okay, that's what I want on my report. Click on next. You want it to look like this? Not too bad. Order ID, order date, first and last. Then I got this many of this at this price, and then this many at this and this price, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so click on next. Do you want to add any grouping levels? Let's see, at order ID, I would like to, whenever order ID changes, I would like to get a total. Okay, so let's do this on order ID. Okay, order ID, order date first, last, and all this comes out. So that's looking kind of nice. Okay, go on to the next one. Do you want it in any particular order? Well, yeah, I would like it in, well, none of that. Okay, because we've already got everything else up in the headings, so that's fine. Okay, click on next. Would you like to lay out your report? Yeah, that looks okay. Let me see what kind of report I get out of this. I may want to change it. All right, and we'll call this one order multiple row order report. Okay, click on finish. And okay, yeah, this is looking all right. Now, notice that this, whenever the field has been squished too much to show you all the data, it will put this instead. So I would need to go and modify the layout of the report to allow more room right there. But for Joe Smith, we saw this, this, and this. Thing missing is the total. We also need more room for the price. But I think you can see the layout is working just fine. And we would get this order ID. Here's Joe. Okay, this would be where you would tear it off. And there would be the next one. That's for Sam. That's where you would tear it off. And that's looking all right. Okay, so stop the sharing at the moment. And, ooh, okay, I need start my video up again. Where is that? There we are. Okay. All right. Speaker, your headphone work. We took a look at a perfectly fine solution of data into third normal form, and it was fine for third normal form, other than it really did not meet the requirements of the environment it's in. So we went back and had to make a change. Now, y'all saw what all I went through to make the change there and how long that took, even though it was fairly quick. If you're just sitting here watching, that was a long time. Imagine if we had already entered over 1,000 orders before we hit the first one that had multiple lines. And it's not until that point you realize that the database design is wrong. What do you do? Do you go back and redo the database and throw out everything that's already there and tell the poor data entry people that got 1,000 orders already placed in that they have to do them all over again? I've been in a situation where I worked at a bank that was bringing in a new database package, and that is exactly what happened to us. We had worked for 2 or 3 days, we being the tellers, had worked for 2 or 3 days entering information into this new database. And we walked in one morning and it was one of those quiet times that tells you something's wrong. And they had had a long meeting and decided the best route to correct the data and get everything right was to start over. Don't be that person. Get it right to start with. Check with people, have your design reviewed by not just other designers, but by people that actually work with it. And somebody might have noticed that to start with, and a couple of minutes of changing in the design would have saved 3 days worth of work having to be repeated because the design was wrong. So there's all these rules to follow about making sure you get the database right. But Those rules are no guarantee that everything is okay. All right, this is normalization of a database. Good starting point, but have that design reviewed by someone who knows what they're doing. And I am going to stop the recording now.